Hi, welcome to Recent Reads, where I take a look at some comics that I've recently read and liked. I will be sure to put a link below the video for the authors and publishers so that you can get your hands on these comics yourself. This is Hot Comb by Ebony Flowers, and we, the Comics Claptrap, just recently interviewed Ebony Flowers, so I recommend you go check that out. We had a real fascinating chat with her, but I thought I'd give the book a flip through on this segment just so that we could see more of her art. So this book is a collection of short stories. Some are autobiographical and some are fictional. And there's a thread throughout them all where they all, in some way, touch on the subject of black women's hair. In some stories, it's more prominent. In some stories, it's kind of just passing references. But, for example, this first story is autobiographical, and it's about the author getting her first perm. There's stories, all kinds of stories in here, though, exploring different relationships, families, peer groups. This is about a black girl who plays softball on a team that is everyone else is white on the team, and talks about how they're insensitive when they talk about her hair. It alienates her, makes her seem other, and it causes her a lot of anxiety, and she ends up pulling out strands of her hair as sort of an anxious response to the treatment that she receives. Ebony Flowers does a great job of just portraying people, how they act, how they speak in a very natural and realistic way that really stayed with me long after I finished reading. So there we go. That's Hot Comb, published by Drawn and Quarterly. This is Crime World number 5 by David King. And this is a series that follows this character. His name is Lopez, who's a police officer who kind of gets in trouble with the law as well. That's a real oversimplification. I don't want to get too much into the plot, but let's just take a look. King's comics are always really subtle, but funny, surreal. They take a lot of twists and turns. I really love his inking and his cartooning chops. Like he's really good at using the language of comics to show what the characters are thinking and their moods. And then his ink line, if you like, really gritty, textural sort of ink lines, this has it all. Like if you can look at how he portrays the fire and the smoke and the shadows cast on the ground here. That really is a style that I like. Another thing about this book that was surprising is that, it seems like a very modest photocopied mini comic, but then it has this awesome full color mini poster inside. Crime World number 5 by David King. This is Egg Cream number 1 by Liz Suburbia. And the main story in here is actually a follow-up to an older book by her. This book, Sacred Heart, which was published by Fantagraphics back in 2015, which I really liked. And so this book is the story of a town full of kids who have been abandoned by all of the grown-ups and just left to fend for themselves. And it turns out that the grown-ups are all part of a cult, and they've left following their cult leader. So this just shows the kids and how they survive and live and die in this abandoned situation. So this was a great book. This Egg Cream, it just came out in 2019, and the first story in here is a follow-up to Sacred Heart, where it's mostly told in the form of a TV documentary that discusses the events of this abandoned town and the aftermath, and interviews the survivors, the kids who survived the situation. which is a great device for telling this story. The original story was very compelling. It just continues here. So I was really happy to see this since I liked the original story so much. This is a great way to follow it up. So then there's a second story in here that is a series of dreams told as vignettes. And this was published, a joint venture between Chapbooks and Silver Sprocket. Egg Cream #1 by Liz Suburbia. This is the Puerto Rican War, created and published by John Vasquez Mejias, and it's summarized well on the back cover as the story of Puerto Rican revolutionaries in 1950 told with woodcut. So, the obvious thing that stands out about this book is that every page, every line of text, all of the art is a wood block. So, a very striking style. It's real feast for the eyes. There's so much to look at, and it's a very interesting story too about revolutionaries in Puerto Rico in 1950 and their response to the oppressive United States government. It includes an assassination attempt on Harry Truman. It's a substantial work. I don't know if this is maybe 100 pages. It's amazing to think about the author doing all of this carving of wood blocks to make this comic. And then in the back, there's after the story concludes, there are profiles of some of the characters from the story, giving a little bit more context. So that's The Puerto Rican War by John Vasquez Mejias. And this isn't a recent read. It's not a recent publication, but I wanted to bring out March by Congressman John Lewis, along with Andrew Aydin and Nate Powell. Congressman Lewis died yesterday at the age of 80. And in case you haven't read this 3-volume series, I can't recommend it enough. It tells the story of Congressman Lewis, pictured there, as he was one of the most important figures in the civil rights movement of the 60s. Comics are just lucky to have had, a congressman of such importance, who led such an astonishing life, who was then game for putting his story into this medium. If you haven't read March by John Lewis, get it. Get it for your kids. It's an incredible work. Okay, that's another episode of Recent Reads. I'd love to know what you think. If you have ideas for future inclusions, if you think this was worthwhile, watchable, whatever, just let me know in the comments below, and I will see you around. Thanks. Bye.